everybody. Before we jump into today's episode, we have two sponsors we want to say thank you to for supporting this show. The first one is Routine. You guys have heard me talk about Routine, honestly, back from the early days of the podcast, and it's still a product I use every single morning. They have a prompt for me here. I'm going to do a little impromptu on this ad read today because honestly, this is a product that I truly believe in. And so I'm just going to tell you guys exactly what I think and why. First and foremost, this is a stat that they shared, but when you sleep, you lose between a pound and a half of water. And most of that's just sweating while you sleep. I used to not know if that was actually true, to be honest. I felt like a pound to a pound and a half of water seemed like quite a bit while I slept. But the one thing I did constantly pay attention to when I started using Routine was just the fact that before using Routine, I always felt a little dehydrated in the morning. And I'm one of those people that when I get up really early usually. I work out. One of the first things I do is some form of fitness. It's just like what I do before everyone's awake. And so it's very easy for me to grab a coffee, pre-workout, an energy drink, something with caffeine in it, and just go. When I am good about using Routine, first, I basically they come in these little single serve packets. They contain half an organic lemon, a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, Himalayan sea salt, all 6 essential electrolytes, and they have no sugar in them at all. A lot of hydration products are going to have sugar. So one of the things about Routine that I love is that there's no sugar in there. So when I am good about doing this consistently, I will take one of those single serve packets, I'll throw it in my mixer bottle, and whether I also put in a pre-workout or something with caffeine or I just drink that separately, I try to drink that first. And the days I do that, I do genuinely feel hydrated and just have a different form of clarity all morning. A lot of people have tried to make their own homemade versions of Routine, right? You see people they take a shot of the apple cider vinegar, they put a little sea salt, a little lemon in a drink. This is essentially that, but in a product that you can take with you on the go, have it ready for you first thing in the morning. I know me personally, when I'm groggy rolling out of bed, the last thing I want to do is, squeeze a lemon, cut lemons up, go get the apple cider vinegar, find my sea salt. I just rip this packet open, throw it in my water, drink it, and it's good to go. You can try yours today. If you haven't tried it yet and you've been listening to this podcast for years, just try the damn Routine. Give it a shot. You can use code ShaneWhite30 and get 30% off your first order. So you get 30% off by using code ShaneWhite30 and go to yourroutine.com. To make it even easier, I've added the link to yourroutine.com in the show notes. So just click on the show notes for this episode, click on the link to yourroutine.com, and don't forget to use code ShaneWhite30. All right, guys, today's episode is also brought to you by Neuro Roast. Again, I'm going to go a little off script here. Neuro Roast is a product that I also came across during this year of 2023. They are a coffee company that's helping you optimize your brain function and overall well-being. This is another product that, to be honest with you, when I first started working with it, I was a little on the fence. I was like, do I really want to have mushrooms in my coffee? Well, folks, I will tell you, when I use Neuro Roast, one of the things that has stood out to me the most is I'll back up. People that know me know that I have way too much caffeine, typically. One of the things this year I've done a good job of is cutting out alcohol. Not completely, but predominantly, I don't touch a lot of alcohol anymore. What I think I've actually done the other way, though, is add a lot more caffeine. So I do definitely drink too much caffeine. That's something I need to work on next year, is to try to minimize how much of that. But Neuro Roast is something that has actually helped me. Because of the way they've formulated their coffee, like unlike regular coffee, which is, still something I consume, but Neuro Roast specifically doesn't cause jitters or crashes. Mushroom coffee provides more balance and sustained energy, allowing you to stay focused and productive throughout the day. So the times I do use Neuro Roast, I'll be honest, I just don't feel that jittery, like, I'm jumping out of my chair or standing here at my desk, jumping around feeling. So give Neuro Roast a try. They have some really good flavors. I'll be honest too, the two guys that started Neuro Roast are just really good dudes based out of New York, and they're hustling, and hopefully they can get some people to try Neuro Roast this holiday season by listening to this podcast. So for you folks who've been on the fence, I'm telling you, it tastes delicious. They've done a fantastic job of making this coffee not only be functional, but taste fantastic. And if you want to try Neuro Roast, you can use code Shane White. So it's super simple, just Shane White at checkout. you'll also get 30% off. So if you go to neuroroast.com, and once again, I have added that to the show notes. So just click into the show notes while you're listening to this episode. You can click on NeuroRoast link directly. Don't forget to use code just Shane White, and you'll get 30% off your order. Hope you guys love both these products. I'm trying to not only bring you guys products that I use, but that I believe in on the podcast. I'm not taking ad reads for any brands that I don't really believe in. So anyway, hope you guys love both those products, yourroutine.com and neuroroast.com. I've added those links to the show notes. I hope you guys love it. And I got an awesome guest coming up right after this. All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Shane White Show. I'm pumped today to have Conor Robbins on the podcast. Conor, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Good, man. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. I felt like our meeting was a little serendipitous because we had this like first meeting because of a mutual client, and I immediately was like, oh shit. Me and Kyle always joke about how like one area after Noble someone needs to go solve is just the 3PL just mess of what it is. And in meeting you and getting to ask you some immediate questions about your background and how you got into it, I was like, oh, I got to have you on the podcast because I'm sure there's a million people in this industry that would love to hear your story and learn more about Sphere. So without teeing it up even any more than that, would you mind giving everyone listening who doesn't know who you are just a little bit about you and a little bit about Sphere, and then we'll dive in?
Yeah, no, totally. Well, definitely no one knows who I am. I'd say I'm definitely very hidden. Yeah, so I'd say the basic gist on my background so far is that I started in startups in college. So I went to Fordham University, took night classes, and then very serendipitously just got an internship at a tech startup. I was also looking for some side money to pay for tuition and commuting costs. Ultimately had more or less a full-time role and responsibility there, like sort of my sophomore year, I'd say. So that's sort of like the bug I caught. And then a series of like individual projects, I'd say like probably similar to you, like serendipity sort of takes the wheel and like pulls you in a direction. And ultimately ended up at a company called Mischief in Brooklyn. And I joined right as the Satan shoes were happening, which was like sort of a big blow up event big viral shoe event in collaboration with Lil Nas X. We ended up getting sued by Nike. I had joined right after that lawsuit, essentially. I'd say it was like, I was interviewing for another job, funny story, in Napa Valley at the time. And I remember like the shoes dropped and the Nike lawsuit happened, and it was like trending on Twitter #1. And I was sitting in a conference room in Napa Valley doing this interview and looking at my phone being like, shit, I should probably get the Mischief job. So that was it. I just decided like this is where I want to be, and ultimately like worked out. Got to start. I think it was like that next Thursday or something like that. And yeah, it was a scrappy small team. I didn't really have any experience, like period, let alone in consumer. But we didn't have a marketing function, and so I was sort of like the most junior person where they decided like, hey, we're going to hire for inexperience and just sort of hustle. I believe that was the strategy. Yeah, and then sort of again, I think it went relatively well and got to hire out a couple people and run that team for about a year. And so that was my like foray into like consumer goods. And then the 3PL thing happened because I was kind of just traveling and taking a bit of a leave and just trying to take some time to think about what I wanted to work on, and knew I wanted to start a company. And um, I didn't want to do the thing where I raised money and then sort of saw not a lot of traction after 2-3 years. Was really interested in consumer goods, and like honestly, it was kind of like I was looking for permission to just keep learning, and the 3PL experience seemed to just be broken enough that I was like, I can win here with like hustle and ingenuity and just trying to be on top of stuff, and I get to learn another side of the business that I didn't really have a lot of exposure to, and fill a pain point for a customer segment that I like looked up to and wanted to learn from. And 3PL is like, right, like you're really partnered with brands, right? Like similar to what you guys do. Like you're not like a SaaS vendor that you like occasionally get a service ticket for, you sort of just like put the credit card on file and it runs every month. Like you're deeply integrated into the operational process of like a brand. And so it was kind of like a very obvious, like, hey, I get to learn a part of the business that I know nothing about. And if this goes well and I get to work with like smart people, then like I'm talking to them every day. Like we have two similar clients that like you're familiar with. And like I am like super grateful that I get to like hang out with those guys every single day and like work for them every day and like watch the businesses grow. Like I'm learning a ton. So that was the idea, and it's been working out so well.
That's amazing, man. Yeah, I would agree. It's fun, like when you work with people like that, it like feeds off of everything you do. You're passionate about your portion of it, but then you're part of something way bigger, right? And I have to give a shout out too. It's funny if anyone's watching right now. A lot of people listen, but we actually have quite a few people that watch the podcast. This is how I first heard about you too, Connor. Was basically one of the brands was trying to get up and running as fast as they could with you guys, and you were like sleeping on the floor at the 3PL. Is the story I heard. Very like Elon Musk esque of Connor here, and but like right now you're like literally in the. I just love it. You're like in the warehouse, like you're just part of this thing right now as we're talking on the podcast. You broke away to do this. Thanks for taking the time. But I think for everyone listening who maybe, a lot of people that listen are definitely in the CPG industry, but there's definitely a lot that are not. And so I think for anyone listening, kind of a little bit of an additional background on why I thought this was so interesting to talk to Connor. As I've worked in CPG from RX Bar on, and then I was at Walmart, I like helped them stand up some of their early fulfillment centers. So I was in those huge, massive, fulfillment centers that Walmart has. I know number one, how complex it is, but also number two, how bad of a service provider 3PLs can be to young brands. And so
Totally.
it's been interesting as like through my experience, just like it just seems like a lot of brands just bang their head against the wall. Honestly, similar to like what we're doing with Noble, it's like with agency partners where you just feel like you're one of so many and it's just hard to get someone on the phone to actually get help, to actually have high levels of service and I would say like responsiveness and also getting your product either whether it's checked in or shipped out on time and the data behind it to make sure you actually know what's going on with it. And the list goes on and on and on. And that's why when I met you, I was like, oh shit, you're actually trying to solve something that is like a macro problem in this industry. Um,
Yeah.
when you first like, when this resonated with you and you said, hey, this seems like a problem I can go solve, obviously very audacious. Love that, that in the part of the story. What was like step number one? I always love diving into this in the 0 to 1 story of you. Like, you have this idea, great, but now you're like literally, if someone's watching, you're sitting in a warehouse that you own and you're running. And what was step one for you to even kicking Sphere off, and how did you go about figuring that, like how to start?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so I should say like one caveat is like I think anyone young when they start a business, like you start and you're kind of like I'm going to take over the world, and then you sort of have more grounded sense as you go, and like um, pragmatism sets in, I guess. And so yeah, like you mentioned, like I don't view what we're doing as like a macro ultimate scalable thing. I view it as like we're an industrial service business. Like yes, we have warehouses, but I believe it's a little bit misleading to say that we're an industrial business in the sense that like really what we should be looking at and studying for inspiration is like the McKinseys or the CAs of the world, right? We're a service business. And so that's how we think about it. And yeah, in terms of the 0 to 1, though, I'll back up and tell the story briefly, which is like, yeah, so I had decided that this was the direction I wanted to go in, was like really excited about, fulfillment. Ultimately, we started in a pretty specific niche. We started doing alcohol fulfillment. That was like all we did for the first like probably year. And the way that happened was I had met a few people, one guy in particular who had been running alcohol brands and just had described this as a problem. They were like, we'd love to sell more online, but we can't because of like restrict regulation and packaging considerations and these types of things. And so that was like the introduction to this thing. And he actually, the guy that I was speaking to had like a general outline of like what the solution for this could look like. To build more of like a traditional fulfillment center for the alcohol industry, because the way that it was working and the way that majority of how it works today still is that you have independent liquor retailers that fulfill online orders because you need a liquor license to sell alcohol, and brands can't go acquire those licenses. So you literally have like liquor stores fulfilling orders. And so we were like, well, if we build a proper fulfillment business and we just do alcohol and we have this licensing, like that'd be awesome. And so ultimately it like grew from there, and we ended up like moving to other categories, and now we have more warehouses and it's great. But that was the start of it. And yeah, in terms of like how we started, like I didn't raise a bunch of money for this. I did not there was no VC, there was no like, like the little life savings that I had from sort of previous or prior ventures that like rolled into this. But so I was like, how do I do this as cheaply as possible? And like, again, just step by step, like how do you sort of start to de-risk this and start to like prove that people are willing to pay for this and you can actually handle it. You can like all this stuff. So we actually started out of a self-storage locker. That's how I did this to start. So like
Did
I
you
went to,
really
yeah.
like a
So
used
so I
store kind of thing?
as a cube smart. So what
No
I
way.
decided Washington D.C. And was like where I was going to start this because of some of the alcohol related stuff. I won't go into too much detail there, but that was like the best place to get licensed to do this. And so I packed up my car and I drove down to Washington D.C. And when I drove around town, I spent like the next week driving around like all the industrial parks, like kind of just walking into warehouses and like asking if I could sublease space. And no one wanted to entertain it. It was not something people were interested in like helping out with.
You're like, hey, I got a
Also,
bunch of booze I'm trying to sell. Like, can you just give me a little
yeah,
corner of your warehouse, please?
literally. And I actually will say one thing that you learn pretty quickly is like in Washington D.C., a lot of like pretty much like half of the industrial space, because like no one opens industrial businesses in Washington D.C. Like you just wouldn't do it. The space is too expensive.
We don't have to go into. But I was so curious because it does seem like a. Again, I was a part of like the Walmart.com decisions of not decisions necessarily, but like
Yeah.
where they stood them up, and DC was never on the roadmap. So I was curious why you
No,
started in DC.
it
It was
would
really just
only be for
alcohol.
alcohol. It was literally just
Okay,
for alcohol. And so that was the idea. So I was driving around, I was trying to find stuff. Most of the industrial space is federally leased. So if you go around and you were like walking into a random industrial building, it's like Homeland Security or the FBI or like, like
really?
buildings. Yeah, buildings that you probably shouldn't just like stroll into. And so like, you definitely catch some eyes when you're like walking up the Homeland Security, warehouse, and you have no idea that that's what they do, and asking if you can
Oh, so
sublease
it look
space.
like I'm from Indianapolis, so like there's a huge warehouse park like west of downtown. So you're saying like you just went to one of those like warehouse parks and that ended up being
Yeah.
like all of these like three-letter agency warehouses?
Yeah, literally. Like literally. It's V Street, it's in DC, Northeast, like if you go to like near the Costco, like it's all like federally
Oh,
leased
that's
space.
hilarious. Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
And DC as like a local government like is generally pretty cash strapped because their biggest tenant is the federal government. It doesn't pay property tax, right? So like if you think about it, like
Oh, yeah,
that's
sure.
so anyway, so you get a lot of parking tickets in DC, and I'm convinced that's like one of the reasons structurally. But
Oh,
yeah,
it
so
makes
so
sense.
I couldn't find any sublease opportunities. So the next best was kind of like, okay, well, how much space do I actually need? It's like okay, probably like 100 square feet, a couple hundred square feet. Like you don't really need that much to get started. And so
And
I
sorry,
just
Connor, one question's important there for people listening. Did you have an alcohol client to start? Like, did you have somebody lined up, or were you like, hey, I think this is a need for this space. If I get the space, I think I can get a client.
we had one, yeah. So there was one person that was willing to work with us, which is a whole other story that like we should probably tell offline,
Yeah, it's
and
just more of
maybe over
a
a beer or something.
for
Yeah,
the 0 to 1 story. I think it's
there,
important to know, like having a taste, like you might have a business opportunity, is an
yes,
important. It's one piece of your story, I'm sure, where if you think back, like even just having a small sense that hey, you might be able to get this business allows you to
totally.
then be a little riskier to say like I have one person that'll work with us. Because honestly, the reason I stopped there was with Noble, it was very similar. Like we had one brand that was like,
Hmm.
yeah, like we're kind of at a place right now where we don't want to pay for a big agency. We'll definitely let you guys like take the wheels and prove out what you're saying you can do. And it's all like sometimes it's all you need. You just need one you might get 100 no's first, but you just need one yes to just give you a taste of like, hey, I can do this. So anyway, sorry, keep going. I thought that was important to stop and for everyone listening.
No, 100%. And that's exactly what it was. It was just like one person that was kind of like, actually, the first couple were people that were just completely clueless. Like, I don't think they really knew what a 3PL did. They didn't know what fulfillment was. They were just kind of like, I know that you do this and I know that I need this. So, like, I don't know anyone else that does this. So, like, let's do it. So, like, those were the first few. Ended up, like, not being people that we worked with a long time. But of the clients that we like are sort of like we've worked with for a decent amount of time now, like, it was exactly that, which is like there was no misleading like hey we're this big warehouse. It was hey like I'm going to show up every day, like I'm going to be able to answer the phone every day, like. And I think that was like appealing for like a younger, more scrappy scaling brand that didn't want to have fulfillment in house but like wanted someone else to take care of it, and was like nervous handing their stuff off to like a big warehouse that had other larger clients that they're prioritizing. So like, I mean, that's always going to be an opportunity that exists if you like want to start a 3PL or any like service business like this. It's like there will always be a market for like smaller up and coming brands that just like want you to pick up the phone every time they call
Sure.
and like not
Yeah.
be
Right. Right.
lower on the
Right.
priority stack. So that's exactly what it was.
Very cool, man. Okay. And so you're in DC. So what ends up happening? You get a bunch of no's from these. Like I can imagine, the FBI is probably like, yeah, Connor, no, you cannot have a piece of our warehouse. Joking, but like,
Yeah.
what did you do? So what ended up happening? So you're like, fuck it, let's go get a storage unit? Like, how did you go from that to that?
Yeah, no, it was just I just decided I needed a couple hundred square feet and that was it. And I was like, where can I get that? And it's probably, Cube Smart. And so I just walked in and I said, hey, can I see can you show
Brilliant.
me what you have? And that was it. And so like, yeah, I got freight delivery. I had to borrow the neighbor's pallet jack because I didn't have that. Didn't realize you need that to unload a truck. Like this is just showing you how much I knew at the time. And yeah, and so I like loaded it up, got some boxes from Uline and like a label printer, and just started shipping. And then like anything in life, like it's just incremental. So like over time, you like you have more orders that are then you can like print labels for in advance and then bring to the Cube Smart. So you're like, well, how do I get a label printer in here? Well, I need electricity. Well, how do I get electricity? Like there's no outlets. Like, and then I ended up finding a way to siphon it from the light bulb. And you just do a bunch of weird,
Wow.
scrappy stuff like that. And then you have a little CubeSmart 3PL, and that's how it happened.
That's incredible. I could imagine. I'm sure you do. I always find it fun. Do you have? I'm sure you have pictures from back then. Did you stop
A
taking
million,
pictures? Yeah,
a million. Yeah. It
because it's
was
so
so
cool now. I mean, you're
ridiculous.
sitting obviously at like a legit warehouse, and to think that you started there. Were there? So I mean, guess like there's the weather in DC. It's not like it's nice. So were you in the? Was it like heated? Are you there in the winter, like freezing your ass off, packing boxes out? Like I'm trying to envision what this looked like.
Yeah, it was not comfortable. Like it was, and by the way, there are for sure people that live there. Like it's not like this was not like a nice setup at all. It was freezing in the winter. It was hot as hell in the summer. Yeah, no, but like I don't know, you got to do what you got to do. And like honestly, like I personally have this mentality. I'm sure you do too. Like you have to be a little bit like naive and like not full of
Have
yourself,
to.
but like a little bit self assured to like start a business. And so I don't know, you just show up at the cube every day, and like I was like
Well,
every
it's
time I
it's
saw a
it's
new
it's
client, I'm
funny.
like I'm
Oh,
balling right now. Like this is sick. I'm so successful, and you stop it, and you pull up to a cube smart every day. It's a little bit delusional, but like you kind of just got to do that.
yeah, but you know what's funny? I mean, I don't think there's a single success story out there where there's not some sort of that story where there's this scrappy mentality. Like man, I think if you just like boil down almost every founder story, it's like you see a problem or you see a need, and you just get it's almost like blinders on, and it's just like I'm gonna go solve this, and then there's issues that come up every day. I always say the biggest change from going from a W-2 job to being an entrepreneur is that you get hired and fired every day. It feels like you basically like you'll maybe sign a client or you'll sign someone that you're going to fulfill orders for, and then something crazy happens that feels like it's the end of the world and this business is about to blow up. But then you get a call at 5 o'clock and you sign another client. It's like you have to get used to just getting punched in the face, but also like almost like confetti going off. It's like the most kind of fucked up mental thing of all time. Like it's like on a daily, weekly, and you zoom out from like a couple months and you're like, what the fuck just happened? I always say that's the best way to describe starting a business is just like, if you don't write it down or somehow keep track, you kind of just are, you're blazing ahead, and you take the wins and the losses as kind of like, you kind of like just kind of write them off your shoulder because you're just ready for the next thing. Like whether it's something you got to deal with or it's a win, it's constant. And so I'm sure you feel that way. It's
Yeah,
like it's almost like the highs and the lows become just like a midline of just like I'm operating.
totally. I mean, they kind of the like severity of the highs and lows like increases. Like a high is significantly
Yes.
marginally better, and a low is like holy shit, like the whole thing could fall over. But it's you don't feel that way because you've kind of like you're more adjusted maybe. But yeah, I mean, the people I don't know the people that I like try to spend time around, like older people at least, like the ones that I look at, I'm like, you have it figured out, are the ones that have a more pragmatic perspective. Like the whole thing is a game, right? And so if the
Yeah.
whole thing is a
Yeah.
game, you can't take any one win or loss too seriously. It's not like you're not, you're not the main character in a movie. Like it's just you're playing this big game and it's just fun and you get hooked on it. And that's what it is.
Mhm.
It's just like you show up every day and like you got to decide if you're just one of the people that wants to play the game or not. And like if you like it, like you'll probably just know immediately because you'll just spend all your time on it. So like hence sleeping on the floor. But yeah,
I love no. That's such a. I'm gonna turn that little part into a clip because that's such a good point. It's so true. It's like a big video game. Um, let's go back. So you're at the storage unit. I love this so much. Like this is maybe one of my favorite stories I've ever heard. And how long did you operate out of there? Like when did you finally say, all right, Connor, Like we're at the point where we need to expand or move on. How long were you there, and then what was kind of the impetus for the next stage, which I'm not sure what that was.
Yeah, it was probably around a year, to be honest with you. So I really tried to milk it. So like when the storage locker, like it wasn't just one. So like we ended up with like seven, like
Mm.
10 by 30. What's 10 by 30 is 300 square feet times what's times seven. That's like basically a
What?
couple thousand square feet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2,100 square feet. Okay. Oh, that's pretty good size.
So the thing to note here is that like again, I didn't have any experience. This is not something that like I went around and asked people. Like I ended up meeting a bunch of people that started 3PLs later down the road, and like you find out that like sort of that 2,500 square feet is like the entry level warehouse of sorts. Like if you're going to get industrial space, you pretty much like getting sub 5,000 square feet is generally like not easy. Like there's not a lot of that, but like in that range is where people try to play. And I had heard from a bunch of people that like they had gone and just leased warehouses on day one, and I'm like, dude, I could not have done that. Like, I couldn't have afforded that. Like to put my name down on like a 5 year lease or a 3 year lease, even if you're able to get away with one, right? Like on that much space, I was just like, I
Well,
can't
yeah. I
afford
mean, I don't
that.
even
So like,
know. I have no clue what that costs, but it can't be cheap.
no, I mean, look, it's not. I mean, it's manageable, right? It's like maybe a few $1,000 a month, but like at the time when you have nothing and there's no clients, like a few $1,000 a month is like I need that to live. So
Yeah.
yeah, that wasn't an option. But yeah, I mean, like we got to like a pretty decent size for the setup that we had, and like we had like seven cubes. They were all on the same floor. I would run in like when I would open all the cubes. So like the whole thing was open, and we had like you could like if you were working at like our warehouse, quote unquote, you would like walk around and you see all the open cubes and everything was barcoded and like the whole thing was set up. So it was like a decently
Wow.
legit setup. Like we could get the job done. But ultimately, like you get to a point where like you're pushing a lot of orders out. Like we had FedEx that came and did like a rep visit, and I've never seen someone more confused in their life. They were like, because they saw our numbers, they saw how much we were doing, and we weren't shipping like an insignificant number of orders, and they came through and they were just like, I I'm at warehouses significantly larger than this that are doing much less volume than you. Like this is a little bit
Wow.
absurd.
That's got to be a good
So
feeling though, because you probably realize you're like, oh, like this is way more profitable than it would have been if I would have leased. I mean, maybe not. I don't know what the cost is for all this all in, but I have to imagine that. I mean, that's probably got a good feeling for you. You're like, yeah, see, you can do a lot with a little.
yeah, 100%. And it's so important because it's like you're going to have to, your tuition is like all the mistakes you make, right? And so it's like if you know you're going to make a bunch of mistakes, it's going to cost you money ultimately because you're the one that's on the hook for it, then like you better like keep your costs really low to like while you pay that tuition. And we're still paying it, right? But just like relative to what
Yeah,
you're making, you should just try to spend as little as possible.
that's really good advice for anyone starting a business. I know. I learned this at our X bar. They actually were fantastic at this, but like just being frugal as much as you can be. For as long as you can be. It's a philosophy that we try to instill all the time. Is just like constantly questioning: do we need that? Do we need to pay for that? You know, it's funny. It's like sometimes I think some people think it comes off cheap, but when you're an entrepreneur, it's like every penny counts. And so if you can get away with running the operation with less, and it's still efficient, and you're servicing your clients, and at the end of the day, the performance for them is where it needs to be, which is ultimately what matters. Then all the other stuff's kind of fluff. I kind of become a big fan of less is more and everything in life. So that hit home for me.
Yeah.
Did you, and now
In bad
Connor, at
times,
this point, did you, sorry, go for it. Go for it.
no, I was gonna say in bad times it's pretty easy because like you don't have as much coming in. It's out of necessity. It's really hard when like things are going well and you're like signing a bunch of deals to like
Oh
still
yeah,
be
for
disciplined.
sure. How have you tried to handle that? Because I could see in your world too. Again, now I'm thinking back to my time at Walmart. Like there's things that can help speed up your life, make things easier. That I could see like making investments into capex and different things that would speed up. But at the same time, you're like, do we need to spend money on something like that? I don't know. What are some examples of things like that you've had to just think through?
Like storage, the CubeSmart's a perfect example. Like we could have easily afforded a small warehouse like well into when we were using it, and I was just constantly like, how do we stack up to like all the way to touching the ceiling? How do we like do all these things to clear up more space to like pay less to like I had like a metric which was like what is our like rent per like pallet slot, right? Like or like
Oh
that
yeah,
was like sort of
smart.
our metric, and I would just track it. And I would like every month religiously, I was like, how low can I get this number? And so like, I don't know, but personally, like I do think that like, um, you can either like coach yourself into that or sort of build the habit later in life, or you can be fortunate to like grow up in an environment where that's instilled in you very early on. And fortunately, like my mom's a
Sure.
small business owner. Her business
Oh,
is like attached to our house growing up. So I watched her running the business,
oh
and she
wow.
was very much like no one touches the thermostat, right? Like obsessive over like those types of details. So like in the
Yeah.
summer, it was always just like slightly warmer than was comfortable, and in the winter, it was just always slightly colder than is comfortable. And we just kind of had
Oh,
to get
that's
used to it. So
funny. Yeah.
like I can't, I personally like I can't like see myself doing it. It's just like I don't know, it's just very natural, like to just try to find ways to like cut costs.
That makes a ton of sense. When you were back, how long did you do it with just you, and when did you end up hiring folks to help you?
So I did it more or less by myself for the first like year. And I ended up
Wow.
having a couple people
So
that were like remote and
when
helping.
FedEx,
But
sorry, when FedEx came, or was it just you?
yeah, it was just me. But I had a friend from Portland who built the WMS that we use, and he was out visiting and like helping me install barcodes for the first time because I didn't know how to do that.
It's amazing.
And we didn't have any desks or tables or anything, so we were just sitting on like boxes on the floor. And the FedEx rep came up, and so it was like him and like me, and we had like I think we had like we had gone to like Costco to get like racks, and we had that like giant Costco size like pita chip bag or whatever, and like artichoke dip, and like he was just sitting on the floor in a bunch of boxes. So it was like the two of us. It was
That's
like
hilarious.
it was the most ridiculous. But yeah, it was just me for the first year or something like that. And now we have people full time now. Like on the like account management side, also like packing, we have to employ full time for that now. So
Yeah.
that changed. Like basically this year, to be honest with you, like we were all part time up until like last year.
Okay. Well, yeah. Because when did you officially start this? I don't know if I know the exact date, the rough date.
Um, we're probably a couple years old,
Okay.
so still
Okay. Yeah.
relatively
Yeah.
new.
For sure. So you okay? So what was it like? Because I always think this is a fun one. The reason I bring this up is even in my experience, it's funny. All the roles I had before Noble, I had one real employee ever at our X bar, and I would even call him JT if he ever listens to this. He was kind of like a half employee. Like he did so much that went directly to our CFO that I always laughed. Like technically he was on my team, but I always considered him like a peer more than someone on my team. Um, but for you, like making the leap to hire people, especially just to like be able to like pick and pack and ship orders out, what was that like? Because I think that's like for any entrepreneur, that's such a pivotal change in your mindset is letting go of something that you own and putting the onus on somebody else to hopefully honestly make it better than what you were doing, but ultimately just letting go of something and letting them run with it. Do you remember that feeling or remember that first thing you let go of?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, so the thing to note, I'll talk maybe about the packing first and then like about some of the account management stuff because they're two different roles. I think they require different things. So the packing thing, well, first on the being cheap thing, I think like it's important to note that like at Mischief, my boss Gabe, who's the founder of Mischief, had this thing that he always said, which was like we don't hire until until we're bleeding. Essentially, was what he said to me, and I
That's
like very much
great, honestly.
deeply believe in that. And so like I always joke because I was literally bleeding. My hands were like kind of getting cut up and like bleeding a little bit from all the boxes. But yeah, I mean, so
Like it's
you
time.
basically get
It's
to that.
fine. It's finally time.
Yeah, exactly. And then when you get to that point, it's like you can easily afford it, right? Because like you're maxing out what you can do, and you know that you're going to be able to do it at least twice as fast because you're just going to you're the owner, right? Like obviously you're just going to be able to put more into it. And so at the time we did it, there was just like economically, it was like a pretty conservative decision. And then obviously like it's a necessity, right? Like you can't like if you want to like the really again the pragmatic way to think about it is like if you want to get from like Keep Smart to like 1 million square feet or whatever your goal is. I don't know what the goal is, but like, you can't pack every box. It's just not practical or realistic. So you knew you had to do that. And then at the same time, it's a process bit like 3PL. It's a process driven business. It's an operational intensive business. And so like a lot of what I did at least was like, how do you stress test like what we had built? And so like, again, I don't know how other people do it. I don't really talk to other like young 3PL operators. It's not something I like really care much to do. Mostly because I think it's
Sure.
broken.
Yeah.
So it's like, what's the point? But the way I did it at least was I just knew that I had a process for doing things, and like I knew that I probably had a lot of intuitive sense for like how to do them, and I needed to make sure that like all of that was intuitive to someone just using our WMS and using our system and process that we had built. So it was like invite someone in, train them up. And then like I literally stood behind his shoulder and I just watched him. And I would just like take notes on my phone about things that I would change. So like he would do the packing and I would just correct him as he went. And then after the day, I would have this long list of things that, like I should probably change this, and then I would go and change those things. So like over time, you just like implemented things that made it more obvious to someone that was joining from scratch.
Got it. Love that. It's like the a process we use is basically we loom a lot of things. That way,
exactly.
It's kind of like the exact same thing. It's a little harder in person because you got to probably have like a video of them doing it or a list, like you said. That's great. Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah.
You start to realize, right? Like all these processes that maybe you think like on the face, like, oh, I do this. I don't know if I could really hand that off. I feel like every entrepreneur I've ever talked to says that. There's always like something. There's some task along the ladder where they're like, that's like something I do. And I think that's something that I've been trying to dig into with entrepreneurs on here. It's really interesting because ultimately, like everything is teachable. Like you're learning, whether you just learned it on your own or figured it out a million different ways. So everything's teachable. But I think as entrepreneurs, that's like the hardest thing we all face is maybe not. There's definitely entrepreneurs that are good at it, but I think in general, that's something that a lot of people face. It's hard. I can imagine for you too, like you go from trying to win business and you're packing out packages in your own storage unit. So it's like very much, I'm sure you had your clients were like texting and calling Conor and talking to Conor and expecting answers from Conor.
Yeah.
To then that first day you start to realize like, oh, like there's going to be orders today that I'm not a part of. And I just have to rely on this person on my team to make sure that it lives up to the standard that I've been doing for a year now. Is that something you kind of had to fight with or deal with?
Yeah, kind of. But I think again, like if you like, I don't know, like Mr. Beast has this thing. Have you heard of the Mr. Beast? Like he makes clones of himself. Like that's how he onboards people. Like he used to do this for way more people.
I don't think I've ever seen this. I love him, so I'm curious. I've never heard this thing.
Yeah, no. So it's like I think I don't know if I'm totally accurate on this, but from what I understand, it's like if he hires someone senior enough, like basically they spend the first, I think it's like up to 2 months, like just like following him, and that's all they do. And like they're not doing their own stuff; they're literally just following him and doing exactly what he's doing all the time. Jeff Bezos had a version of this, and actually Andy Jassy, who's the CEO of Amazon right now, was that role for Jeff Bezos, and then ended up starting AWS. But he was like his like mini me or like clone or whatever. Like anytime he flew on the plane, like Andy Jassy was on the plane. The same with Mr. Beast. It's like he's basically like, look, I can like give you onboarding docs, I can like do this, I can do that, like I can do so much stuff for you. But I do think there's something to be said for like, especially in the early days, like when you do have the time and like ultimately like when I hire one person, that person is one half of the business, 50% of the business. I'm 50%, they're 50%, right? Of the like total makeup of the organization. If you're just like human capital, like obviously I'm probably gonna do more work, but like generally speaking. So it's like if you're basically diluting your sort of like yourself by 50%, you were 100%, now you're 50%. Like you should probably spend a lot of time like figuring out how to onboard that person, make sure that they're on the same page, especially with the service business, like 3POs. So yeah, we would just like I did that. I just followed them around and like I would just watch what they do and I would course correct and like the same, like they would follow me around. So like kind of sort of, but by the time I like stopped watching and just let him do stuff, it had been a bit where I had seen enough and it was like he was kind of just, he didn't really need me there. It was more just me being like paranoid. So
sure,
but yeah. I think that's generally a good rule.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I'd never heard of that. I think it's yeah, I'm trying to think. It's funny, like I'm trying to think back to all the roles that I've had over the years, like being the new guy. And it's true. And maybe just like everyone's learning style is different. I would have thrived in just following my boss around, like being in all of his meetings and even like sitting over his shoulder and watching what he's doing in fucking Excel versus like sitting at my desk silently all day, just trying to like read through documents. Like it took me forever to get up to speed on a couple things because I was just doing it on the sideline. It's kind of like the man in the arena. It's like, you got to just get in and be in there and figure it out and fail.
Totally.
I love that. That's really cool. I've never heard of that before. My mind's racing because I'm thinking about all the things I could do to apply that to. So when did you, what was like the first real warehouse then? Is it the one you're in right now?
No. To date, maybe like just as a picture as to like what we where we are, like what does the business look like from a square footage perspective. So we have 3 warehouses. We've got one in Washington, D.C., which is like we had the CubeSmart situation. We jumped to a warehouse in D.C., which is where we still operate that. It does all of our alcohol shipping, which is still a decent chunk of our business, and we're continuing to invest in. That is a 5,000 square foot facility. And then the facility I'm in now, which is in Maryland. We're like 30 minutes, like, I guess, east of West Virginia, to give you an idea of like where we are. But it's
Okay.
basically
Okay.
like an hour, just under an hour from the first one. And this one is 25,000 square foot. We have another 25,000 square foot on the
Oh,
back of the
wow.
building that we have. We're trying to put an option on that so we can run at that too, but significantly larger, obviously. And then we've got Portland, Oregon as well for West Coast for dual node fulfillment for larger brands, especially that want East and West Coast coverage. So that's like kind of like the makeup so far.
Damn, that's
Portland's
a fucking huge
yeah
jump.
yeah
I'm thinking about this now. Like, wait a minute, we're going like little baby steps, and then I feel like you just jumped. Especially
yeah, but
going
it
East
just
Coast, West Coast. What a great move, because that's another thing we can dive into that I know I've ran into issues trying to help brands get into 3PLs that I didn't realize you guys had.
Yeah, and but by the way, like I think it's doable, like, especially in client service. In client service, like you always have the opportunity for your like next deal to be your best deal. It just requires a couple like things. It requires like saying no to a lot of deals, right? So like as you progress, being like having the ability to say no to deals, and it sucks and like it feels weird and uncomfortable at first. And then you usually have to be like considerate of the fact that like if they're not going to be a client that you focus on a lot, then like they're probably better off somewhere else, and it's probably going to hurt your business and dilute your time anyway. So the opportunity cost for taking on a
100%.
client that is not going to be your best client, that is like your time, and it's a service business and you only have so much time, and so therefore like it's a pretty high opportunity cost. So there's a like I don't know if you've heard like the Warren Buffett, like he was talking to like this class, and he gave the punch card analogy to investing, which is like if I gave all of you a punch card, it had 10 slots in it, and and it represented every investment decision you were able to make for the rest of your life. So you only had 10. He's like, I guarantee you do pretty damn well. And so I think about the same thing with client services, which is like I generally think if I gave you a punch card and I said to you like each of these punch cards represents like a client that you could take in basically in the entirety of your business, like you'd probably think really, really deeply around the clients that you take on and who you spend time with, and like is this marginally better than the last, right? Does this like move us forward? Does this move the needle for us? Do we get really excited about working on this? And so like that's honestly like we've definitely grown very quickly, but I think that's the reason, which is like we've said no to things that we feel like are going to move us backwards, or that we wouldn't be really excited to spend a lot of time on, because ultimately it's a service to the people we're spending no to anyway. And we just say yes to the things that we are really excited about. The average client size is just like significantly larger now, because of the fact that we've done that.
That's a really interesting point. Yeah, the service business, it's fun having you on here because like a lot of the founders I've had on here, are the founders of a lot of the CPG brands that we both know and love. But it's interesting talking to you because that's exactly like that's such a different side of entrepreneurship that I probably haven't had on here enough is the service side of businesses, because it's almost like you think about two different types of businesses. When you think about a CPG product, for example, you try to make the thing you're selling the best possible thing you can, for lack of better words, and you try to just get it into everyone's hand. That's kind of like at the highest level, like what you're trying to do, right? But then as a service business, you're obviously doing something that is helping them in one of a million things they need help with. But usually the biggest constraint is time. That's usually like the kind of flip the coin. And so you deal with the same thing that I deal with. And that's a really interesting way to think about it. How have you kind of gone about doing that? So like, are there like specific things you're looking for in clients, I'm assuming, or is it a size thing, or like how have you gone about developing your process, Connor, to be like a yes, what's a yes or a no?
Yeah, so like a lot of it's selfish, to be honest with you. It's like, what do I personally get excited about? Like again, like I view Sphere as like a vehicle for me, just like I get to learn a lot, and like ultimately, like one of the reasons I love this category so much and what we're doing, especially the logistics side of the business, is like I had experience on the marketing side. I now get to learn about the logistics side, but also like I love mapping like the amount of stories of these like brands that we love that like started with somebody that had some distribution or logistics related position and was able to understand, because everyone has an intuitive sense of what consumers like, because we are consumers and we
Yeah,
use things, and like
sure.
that's the easiest part. The hard part is like how do you understand the business and what does the market want, like what will pull. And like ultimately Don Voltaggio at Arizona, like right, he started running a distributor, like a direct to retail distributor, like actually in the beer distribution business. Like Anthony Von Mandel, like he started Mike's Hard Lemonade and White Claw. He started in the distribution business. He was an importer. He was the first to import Corona actually to Canada as well.
Oh, wow.
Um, and Peter, right? Peter worked in the logistics business. And then ultimately, like, what was your retail strategy when RX launched, right? It was like very targeted niche. And like, so I just like, I think that like that story
Yeah,
rings
you know the stories. I love it.
over and over and over and over and over again. And
Yeah.
so it's like, that's kind of like why I like doing this. And so first of all, like back to your original question, which is like, I'm very excited about CPG. Like I grew up like loving food, like there's a whole like nutrition aspect to like how I like grew up, and like that's very interesting to me. And so like I just like CPG as a category. And so like I generally will only look at CPG things. Second, from a size perspective, yes, like we're big and we need to fill a lot of space. This is a fixed cost business. We've got 3 leases. Like you got to fill a warehouse, right? So ultimately, like that's important. So we're not like working with people that are, just getting started out. If they are just getting started out, like we are willing to do that too. But like, is this someone with track record that we feel we can partner with, that like we like, I don't personally, again, this is just preference. I'm very selfish now. Like I don't want to do the deals where I have to explain what 3PLs do every time we start working with
Yes.
someone.
Sure.
And you run over each other a bunch of times. There's a lot of confusion. Like you have a rookie chef and a seasoned chef in the kitchen. Like I'm not the seasoned chef. I'm still very early, but like generally speaking, more experience than like what is a 3PL. So like when we work with like, new brands, it's like we're working with a guy who was at like Red Bull and like Health Aid Kombucha and where else was he? Like some other Liquid Death, right? And he's starting a beverage brand.
Oh,
It's
okay,
like
yeah.
perfect example of like he's been there, he's done that. Like I don't have to answer any dumb questions. Like, and we're happy to answer dumb questions, but like he's a
That
great
helps you
partner.
kind of run faster. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that's an early deal that we're looking for. But like otherwise, it's like size, right? Like category, right? Like within the CPG realm, and that's kind of the gist of it. Like we're less inclined to look at like cold storage related things. Like we do look at them. It just sort of depends on like what they're looking for. We work with like one person that does it. We have to like outsource that and like subcontract that, or like sublease that space, which is just a different.
Yeah.
It's something in
That
addition to what we do, which like we're
that's
willing
an
to do
area
it, but
too. I'm sure you've done research. That one just as much, if not maybe slightly worse than my experience with general 3PL is frozen or in refrigerated. So that is certainly an area of opportunity. So Connor, the one thing I wanted to make sure we spent a little time on here at the end was around people who are listening. Like I said at the very beginning, and you know this, it's a lot of CPG folks that listen to the pod. Um, what makes you guys different? I think we both know it's broken, and we know what you saw when you started this. What do you guys really lean on as for Sphere? Like, what are you guys trying to do different to really help CPG brands in the 3PL space, and what separates you guys the most, you think?
yeah. Well, I'll preface by saying we're still figuring it out, right? So like I don't want to we don't have any like any silver bullet here, and I think that's kind of like the like ultimately look, we want to build a big business, and so like we're still trying to figure out like what that means and like what the value prop is to get there, and like it has to be more than just service. But ultimately, I'm going to beat a dead horse here, which is like service, and um, I think that we try to think a little bit more deeply around like 3PL as a service business than like I think most people. Like it's not really like an industrial business in the sense that we just kind of like run our process and you fit into our process and that's it. I think we try to be really hands on. At the end of the day, like we are operational partners in this thing. I'd say like one caveat to this is like alcohol really differentiates us, right? So if you're an alcohol brand, like there are, as you know, if you're an alcohol brand, there are really not a lot of places to go. And a lot of the places to go like are not properly set up to do sort of like higher end, like in mass fulfillment. So you end up like just hitting a ceiling pretty quickly. So we do that pretty well. But yeah, I think we try to think about just being a service partner, like a really, really deep service partner, probably similar to how you guys think about your business, right? Like you're a little bit more integrated than most folks. And again, like there's no one silver bullet to what that means in practice. It's like many things. It's like, how do you handle, like mishandlings? Like what do you do when things go wrong? Right. Like that's a question I think more people should ask vendors before they sign up with them. Not as like everyone
Yeah,
likes to
that's a
talk
good
about.
question.
Well, everyone likes to talk about the 99.99% accuracy rates, but I'll tell you from experience, it's really not that complicated. It's not hard to do. And so like if in a world where everyone has like 99.99% accuracy rates, like what are you doing in the 0.01% of the time? Like that's where most of your time and energy and stress is going to go. And so like if you're vetting someone, like ask them, push them on that. Like that's something to ask them about. Like we try to do like same day resolutions, like like there's a lot of like little things in 3PL that I think are just lost on us, like best practices that had been invented when e-commerce became a thing. Like if you've read Tony Hsieh's book, the Zappos founder's book, like Delivering Happiness,
No, I
he
haven't.
writes an entire section on their fulfillment center. And I'll give you a couple examples of things that they did. Well, one thing that they did is they ran 24/7 fulfillment times, right? And so like in a world in which like most people were not doing same day fulfillment, they were running their facility 24/7, which is less efficient because you can't bulk orders like you can if you like spread your fulfillment times out more, but they did that anyway. They also had some like little programmatic thing that would just randomly upgrade repeat customers to overnight shipping. So they did that. And so we've done that before. We've literally put automations in our partners stores where we cover it, where every, I'm making it up, like 50 or 100 or 200 orders, one random customer that is repeat will get overnight coverage, right? So it's like,
Oh, cool.
you just like do little things like that. Like there's no one silver bullet for fulfillment. I'd say like we're pretty good at just like continuously improving the service and finding little things to build on each other and just compound over time.
I will say too, like I've only worked with you for a little bit, indirectly, I would call it. Kyle obviously does a little bit more than I do for this side of things. For anyone listening, just to vouch for Conor and what he's building, it's been
Bless.
kind of I'll just be honest. It's been like remarkable to be on email threads and calls with you guys. You guys just give a shit. That's like that sounds so obvious. You'd think that would be something that everyone would have.
Yeah.
It's been, I've been doing Noble. It's our 5th year. It's been remarkable how many calls I've been on with 3PLs where that's just absolutely not the vibe. And then there's been issues and you guys have solved things. And then there's been, especially when it just comes to like starting up, there's a million different things that are not going to work perfectly. And you guys have handled all of them and figured them out. And also you guys are just available. Like I think that's in the service space, there's something to be said about just being receptive and available and getting back to people it's just like lost right now. And that's something Kyle and I are trying to do too. And you guys are an absolute gold star for that. So just wanted to make sure I said that on the podcast. Like, already I would say if I were to sell something in this space, like I would be calling you. I'd be like, all right, Conor, I'm working with you. So that's an important piece. I think as we wrap up, Conor, what would be, if there's people listening today, what's the best way for them to learn more about Sphere or even to get a hold of you or the team and learn if maybe what you guys are doing is a better solution than what they have today?
Yeah, there's not a lot of places to find us, but if you email me, it's Connor, one N like McGregor at spheretrading.co. And that's like the best way to find us. We're not really published widely. We're not on Twitter or anything. So you can find me there. That's basically it.
You guys are just doing work, which I love. Yeah, it sounds good. I'll add all that to the show notes. Some of the last questions, Conor, that I always love to ask every entrepreneur that comes on here. This one is, you actually dropped a few in here already, so that's cool, but a source of knowledge. So for everyone listening today, is there anything you've read recently, whether it's a book, an article, a podcast, anything that you think was, hey, this is like memorable and just comes in your mind immediately that you think is worth sharing today?
Yeah, I mean, like a million things. I think that like personally, I have this like thing where I think like most entrepreneurs don't read enough. Like I was never a good student. Like I had to get into read. I had to like learn to like read
Same.
quite literally.
Yeah.
But I just think it's like if you want to be really good at this, if this is your sport, like to like pull the athlete analogy, then like it's a prerequisite. You just got to like read a lot because like a lot of the stuff repeats and like you can kind of just copy a lot of ideas and they tend to work. So maybe to pull a thread of things we've spoken about from a service perspective, like Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh and Mike Ovitz's book, Who is Mike Ovitz, the CIA founder. Those were two like really fucking amazing books that like I personally have stolen a lot of ideas from in terms of just like building a really world-class service business. Also, When McKinsey Comes to Town is another great book about McKinsey. And yeah, there's a lot more, but like those are the ones that I like think about from like relevant to this conversation.
Yeah, no, those are great. I'll add all those to the links as well. And then last question, Conor, this is my favorite one. You're running your own business. You're building something pretty special here. What are the tools that you put around you to map out long-term goals for this year, all the way down to like the shit Conor has to get done today? Are you a pen and paper guy? Do you have a planner? Are you using apps? Like, what are the tools that you surround yourself with?
Yeah, I mean, we have I'll plug Warehands here, which is our WMS, warehands.com, pretty much is a lifesaver. And like we lean on it for like most like warehouse operations things. And that's like majority of the tasks that we have, and then like, I don't know, we firefight. And so like emails just coming throughout the day. And so just like blocking and tackling on that stuff is just like pretty critical. But Yeah, from goals perspective, I try to write like a quarterly update. I don't know if that's like a good resource or like helpful to
Oh, cool.
drop here or relevant, but like I spend probably a week every quarter writing an update of what we did and what I want to accomplish for the next quarter, and then how that like folds into our year goal. So I think that's a
Very
good
cool.
practice, and just like it's a good like here are the things that we should be thinking about every day as we like firefight throughout the day.
I might steal that one from you. That's a really, really good one. How do you pull all that information down at the end of the quarter during that week? Like, are you tracking it, writing it down? Is there something where you're going back and reviewing something?
I spent a week writing them. I think monthly updates are too frequent to spend serious time on them. I think quarterly is probably a good cadence where like you get recurring updates that mark against your annual goals, but you also can spend serious time on them, like because it's quarterly. And
Hmm.
so I try to spend like the first 2 days of the week that I write it, like of the allotted time that I spend writing it, just sort of like recapping what went down over the month, and then just sort of like big list, and then trim it down to like what is the important stuff, and then I like use that as like my template to go and like actually like craft it and write it.
Love it, man. Okay. Very cool. Well, Connor, thanks for the time, man. I know you're obviously a busy man. You got a lot going on behind you. I appreciate it. It was really fun getting to hear more of your story today. And for anyone listening, obviously we'll add the communication to the show notes, and hopefully this turns into some more business for you guys. Anyway, man, thanks for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
Sweet, thanks, man.